Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Andana. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Mandana, and today we have a very special guest, Dania. Dania, who goes by Plastics High on TikTok, is an influencer with over 40K followers. Dania has amassed over 1 million views on TikTok by posting educational medical content through Mean Girls imagery. Welcome, Dania. We're so happy to have you here today. First, please tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us the story behind how you started combining medical concepts with a Mean Girls theme in your TikTok videos. What inspired this unique approach?
Hi, so my name is Dania. I'm a high school senior and I'm going to be in college next fall, double majoring in economics and human biology. So, what first got me into even the idea of Plastics High is just being a high schooler in a science class. Whenever whenever I would sit there in class, I would be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm being boarded out." Um, I've grown up in a public high school where often we didn't really have like the budgets or the funding for like experiments or like in-class projects. So as a result, most of it were just like note taking. And I felt like our notes were really boring, honestly. I mean, they were like monochrome PowerPoint notes. And I feel like for science, you really had to be a little like colorful. You really had to make it engaging for students to want to learn and want to care about the material. So I went up to my teacher one day and I was like, "Hey, for the next for the next class meeting, can I help you decorate your notes?" And she was a little confused by it, but she went along with it and she sent me all the info. And it was a chemistry unit on the properties of water. And basically, I had Regina George explain all of it. And I had like the same decoration that I use on my TikTok videos. And I remember all the students were so like, they were so surprised by it. I remember like kids were actually starting to look up at the board instead of being on their phones. And I'm like, wow. So I just thought that it was so surprising that even the same material, the same science material that me and many other kids might have found boring was engaging for them in that instance.
Wow.
And as a result, I was really inspired to try and take this online and just make it into a TikTok account. So I did that. I basically made like a smaller version of like a little lecture. I believe my first one was on Regina George explaining the brain and its functions. And that one I saw huge success on. And I was just so shocked. And it really pushed me on to make more of these and really, I don't know, make science more entertaining for young students and especially young girls like myself who are like in who are potentially in like high schools where you aren't really exposed to that engaging science content.
Exactly. And I mean, it's good for you because you're learning at the same time. And I'm just,
Mhm.
how did your teacher react when she first saw the PowerPoint?
Okay, she was really just shocked, I guess. She thought that it was like really decorated nicely. She asked me to do it a couple more times for extra credit. I even ended up doing that for my government class, and I made like a little slideshow just like that, explaining government, but with Regina on it. And he gave me extra credit for that as well. So I felt like that positive reception from teachers also really motivated me. And my teacher from then on, she literally took the time to start decorating the PowerPoints and just make them a little nicer to look at and pay attention to. So I felt like I really made a difference in the classroom and obviously like the students are benefiting from it.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's such a unique concept. And
Mhm.
to expand on that, how has using like Mean Girls, how has it helped in explaining these concepts to your audience? Does it help in terms of engagement, in terms of accessibility?
Yes, I think that it definitely has an effect on it. The reason why I even chose Mean Girls in the first place is just because it's a movie that I really like, and I'm sure it is for many other teens, especially girls. So I was like, hey, what, like, wouldn't someone just love to hear Regina and all the other plastics explain science in some sort of way? So I thought about that. And then I got to like thinking of science analogies that would basically break it down and make it more understandable. Like I believe for my first post, when Regina was explaining one of the brain's regions, I had the analogy being like, oh, because of this, she is able to taste her $7 latte. Both of my friends and even the people in the comments, they thought that that was really funny and it made it more understandable.
Mhm.
And I think when you really connect things that students might not understand to things that they're familiar with, they like, it makes them want to pay more attention to it. It makes them more engaged in the content. And like you guys said, it makes it more accessible because students are just seeing this online for free instead of maybe having to go to a private school that specializes in engaging courses or after school programs.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely, helps because a lot of students, a lot of girls, a lot of boys even, they use TikTok
Mhm.
and they may not be inclined to open a book or search how the brain works, but the fact that it shows up on their For You page and it's interesting, it definitely encourages them
Mhm.
to learn. And so your content is both educational and entertaining. How do you strike the right balance between these two elements in your videos?
So I think the perspective of being a high schooler really helps in this case because for me, I know what's going to hold my attention and what's not. So I go in with that kind of frame of reference. And when I make these like analogies and decorations, I think, would I watch this type of video if it were on my For You page? And often that really helps me. Something that I kind of struggle with are the analogies, just because, some science subjects or topics can be really hard, and you had to find a way to make it obviously really funny, and you want to have them keep on scrolling through this and reading it. So a lot of the thing that goes into that is kind of researching and just looking for like maybe articles that break it down into simpler terms instead of these big, huge words that many high schoolers, they don't want to have to take the time to search up.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. And I was wondering, what has been the reaction from your audience and even the medical community to your Mean Girls theme videos? Because I mean, it could really inspire other teachers to like do the same. Have you received
Mhm.
particular feedback?
So I've received a ton of positive feedback on my videos. I mean, I'm one of the biggest motivations for me is when I see comments like, oh my gosh, I wish my teacher was like this. I wish I wish they were teaching like this in school. And it makes me obviously really motivated. I've received comments from medical students saying like, oh, these are really great notes. These are really nice for high schoolers to get into medicine. So I think that's like really, honestly, that's really amazing to hear because you hear medical students saying like, oh, this would really get them into this kind of topic, even if they're not engaged in it.
Mhm.
Um, a feedback I've had is probably like asking like some of my comments would be like, oh, can you go back to more of this style of analogies from like a previous video? So I would take those into consideration when making my next ones, just so I can have it be more engaging and entertaining for them to read.
And now I want to ask you a couple questions about your book.
Oh yes.
So can you tell us about your book, how you came about writing that book? What was the process of writing it, publishing it? Where did you find the time and inspiration to do this?
Mhm.
While maintaining your TikTok page, your studies and in school, all of that.
Mhm. So the title of my book is called The Ritz and The Rich, and by next week, I believe it's going to be available for physical copies. The story follows this immigrant called Kiet. He used to be very wealthy back home, but his father basically persuaded him to move to New York City in pursuit of like international wealth. And when he gets there, he finds that like foreign wealth doesn't really translate into like American prosperity. And as a result, he's kind of working an average job. He's just like a concierge at a really luxurious hotel named the Ritz Carlton, and he is miserable there. Like he has had enough of working there. He's basically serving people who are rich and privileged, and they really remind him of his old self and how he was before he moved there. So it just really crushes his ego and it makes him more miserable. During that period though, he comes across this woman at the hotel who is like a regular, and she's always hosting these really elaborate and glamorous parties. And while he's like drawn in by this, he ends up falling in love with her due to her just like talking to him and treating him like a normal person. She's not really worshiping him because of his money, like how he was home in his home country, but he's also not treated like a little peasant either. So it's really like a breath of fresh air for him. And so that really motivates him to try and, become rich and become someone who could potentially attain her. So the story basically follows that journey. The thing that I definitely struggled with is writing this out while I've been in high school. It's definitely a big time commitment. And whenever I was free, like during class breaks and after school, I would just end up going straight to writing. I was like, I need to do this. I need to get through this. And it kind of helped me with like pushing through, even if I have like time commitment issues. For Plastics High, that's something that I've definitely struggled with just because of, being a high school senior and having all of these commitments. But because of that prior experience, it really let me like push myself and really push out this content, even during the periods of time where I was like extremely busy and I just didn't feel I had the time exactly.
Mhm. Well, first of all, I wanted to congratulate you for publishing.
Thank you.
It really is no easy feat, but I was also wondering what was the process of getting it published? Because I assume that can be a little difficult.
Mm-hmm. So for me, it's a self-published book. So that means that I just upload it to Amazon's KDP program, and they handle like the process of shipping it to people and basically distributing it. They just charge like a percentage of your profits, which I don't think it's too big. Like I don't think it's that big of a cost, especially since they're handling that huge process for me.
Mhm.
And they print it as well?
Yes, it's going to be printed copies by next week.
Wow,
Wow,
amazing.
that really
That's
is
really
amazing.
crazy that you were able to do that at such a young age.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
so moving back to your TikTok page, we were wondering what was your favorite video that you've created so far and why? And are there any particular medical topics or Mean Girls references that resonate most with your audience?
I think my favorite one has to be my video on depression where I used Regina. I felt like using Regina as like the type of person for that video is really interesting because on surface level you think like, oh, Regina is like she's rich, she's gorgeous, she's very privileged. But in the video, I use that point to say like even someone like Regina can have depression just because of her brain chemistry. And I think that a lot of people who watched that were really like engaged by that.
And I was also wondering, beyond TikTok and your book, do you have any other projects or goals that you're currently working on? And how do you envision your platform evolving in the future?
So one of my main projects right now is actually another book. I've begun writing for that one, and the process, it's definitely a little bit easier now that I've already done this before. For Plastics High, my goal is actually to try and turn it into in-person classes in like a local center that we have here in my hometown. So if that works out, it would basically be like teachers coming in and basically using like a similar curriculum to explain different school subjects. And that's been very exciting to just brainstorm and figure out right now.
That's really awesome. Wow. Good luck with all of those projects. I wish you the best of luck and the most success.
Thank you.
Very ambitious, and
Mhm.
it's really great to see people your age like being this involved in their community. And so, do you have any tips or advice for aspiring medical educators like yourself, or just influencers who want to use social media to share their knowledge creatively?
I would say my biggest piece of advice, just for people who want to get into the medical field, even people who aren't exactly thinking about it, but they want to get into science, I would say to not box yourself into one category. Something that I really struggled with when I was younger is always telling myself like, oh, I'm not really good at STEM. I feel like when you tell yourself these sorts of things, like tell yourself like things that you're not good at, it really blocks you creatively, and you don't consider the different things that you could achieve if you really put your mind to it. And I think that I realized that like a lot of just automatically think of themselves not really being able to grasp this knowledge or understand it, when it might have just been the school system that they were in, or it's been some teachers that weren't really meeting their needs, but they could still be good at it. In terms of social media influencers, I would definitely say to use your power sparingly and to really research the things that you're trying to promote and make sure that it's factual, you're being a good influence, and just that you're articulating things well for your audience.
Totally.
Yes. I think it's so beautiful what you're doing. Once again, you have such a nice way of thinking, a beautiful philosophy. So just keep going.
Thank you.
And hopefully some of our listeners get inspired by what you're doing as well to maybe kickstart their own projects. And finally, I had another question. So what's the most important message you hope your audience takes away from your content, whether that be from your TikTok account or your book?
Honestly, to just be creative, because when you think about things too seriously, I feel like it can really stress you out. One of my biggest things that actually helped me with writing is honestly my experience from Plastics High, because I had to think about how like these characters would really word or think about these, like, what's the word? I would really had to think and brainstorm about how these characters would think about those particular science subjects. And as a result, it kind of leaked onto my writing skills. Like it made me able to brainstorm about my characters and how they would talk and articulate themselves. So I think that when you let like your experiences from different things just kind of transfer over and not really limit yourself to one particular subject, it really makes you a more well-rounded person, and it makes you equipped to do things that maybe you might not think that you're very good at.
Totally.
Yeah. And so lastly, we want to thank you for being here and sharing your story with us. Thank you so much, Dania. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you.
And for the listeners, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you all in our next episode of Emma and Dana. Take care.
Bye. Have a great day.